It's not an accident that I was raised in the family that I was raised in. But that wasn't enough to get me to heaven. That wasn't enough to include me in the conservative holiness movement. I have done that by choice, by the grace of God. And I thank the Lord that He has given me the heritage that I have, and I have done my best to pass that on to my own children. And it's just good. I love the family atmosphere, and I really appreciate the youth committee here who is reaching out specifically to the young people and to the children, and trust the Lord will continue to help us together. Well, the theme for this convention is surrender. And I want to speak to you specifically this afternoon about surrendering our brokenness to God, or surrendering our limitations to God, surrendering our insecurities to God. All right? Now, I'm talking specifically to you young people, but I want to see a show of hands from everyone in here that are willing to participate. How many of you have ever felt insecure about yourself? Now, young people, if you could turn around and see, hold your hands up again. I want the young people to see the older people that have their hands in the air. All right? That is not unique to you. That is unique to humanity. All of us struggle. All right? And if we had time, all of us have some things we wish we could change about ourselves. You say, well, Brother Stetler, I don't know. Well, have you ever noticed that tall young people, sort of walk around like this because they want to blend in and they stick out above everyone? And the short people walk around like this because they want to be tall and fit in? Did you ever realize that the biggest trucks are owned by the smallest men? You got to have a slingshot to get up in there. That's the only way they can see the world. Take it easy on them. All right? Those that have straight hair wish it was curly, and so they try to curl it. And those that really have genuinely naturally curly, they want to straighten it. You see, because we feel like what that person has is better than what we have. What that person can do is more important than what I can do. That person's abilities are what I wish that I had. And you know where that comes from? That comes from the devil. Because if he makes us unsatisfied with who we are and what we can do, and the gift sets and the talent sets that God has given us, then he will stymie us at least to that degree until we expend all of our energies trying to be something we're not. And he's content to allow us to do that. In fact, he encourages us to do that because it limits our effectiveness. If you want to be free, if you really want to do something for God, have God to help you to understand who you are and what he has created you to be, and the gift sets that he has given you, and be that person, period. And you will make a difference in your world, and God can use you to help a whole lot of people that are coming behind you and struggling with the same thing. You say, well, how do you know that? I'll tell you how I know that. I know that because that's where I was for many, 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 many years. I was married, I was in full-time Christian ministry, and I was still exerting the bulk of my effort in trying to be something that I was not, because I had this mental picture that if I could only reach that level, then that would make me successful. And the reality is, when I relaxed into the person that God created me to be and accepted my limitations and allowed God to focus me on the things that were important in my life, that's what set me free and made the difference. All right? So I want to just read a couple of verses, and you don't have to turn there. I'm going to go to the book of Exodus, chapter 3. It is from the story of Moses, the call of Moses, chapter 3, verses 10 and 11, and then we'll skip over to chapter 4 and read verses 10 through 12. In chapter 3, verse 10, God has already ignited the bush that is burning, and Moses has turned aside to see it. And God is speaking to Moses now, and he says in verse 10, "Come now, therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt." And Moses said unto God, "Who am I, that I should go unto Pharaoh?" Now let's skip over into chapter 4, beginning with verse 10. And Moses said unto the Lord, "O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore nor since thou hast spoken unto thy servant, but I am slow of speech and of a slow tongue." And the Lord said unto him, "Who hath made man's mouth? Or who maketh the dumb or deaf or the seeing or the blind? Have not I the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with thy mouth, and teach thee what thou shalt say." All right? So I want to look at Moses and his feelings of insecurity and his feelings of not quite coming up to what needs to happen. In his mind, he said, "Lord, I'm not equipped to do what you're asking me to do. Please send my brother Aaron." That's what he says. If you go ahead and look a little bit farther in chapter 4, he's saying, "Lord, Aaron is better." And in verse 14, God responds to Moses, and he's angry. It says, "And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he said, Is not Aaron the Levite thy brother? I know that he speaks well." You see, young people and older people, I have found that this message resonates with a whole lot of people. The issue is not, can you do it best? The issue is, what does God want you to do with your life, with your abilities? And there probably is someone that can do it better. But if they don't have the heart that God gave you and the equipment that God gave you to do His will, they will never accomplish the purpose. You see, we live in a world that lives by comparison. We come to this place and we have group after group that comes and choir after choir that comes and all of these instrumentals, and the tendency is to compare one against the other. Well, I like Hope Sound Best. Well, I like you. Oh, but I like God's Bible School. No, Penn View. Well, I like Allegheny. Let me tell you what, I like them all. And they all do better than I can do. And the issue is, they have come to provide us something to lead us into the presence of the Lord and help us to worship and help us tune our hearts into the things of God. And that's what's important. And it's not who's best that's important. Now, if you're a PR man and you work for a Bible college, they're going to have choir tryouts and quartet tryouts, and all of that is fine and good. And they're trying to find the best group to put on the road to represent that school. And they give careful consideration. And that's important. I mean, they're smart to do that. But not always is it the person that is the best singer that would fit best in a group, because they can't blend. You don't believe that? Look at the New York Yankees. They got all the best players in the world, and they can't win anything because they got a bunch of superstars playing for themselves. Sorry, New Yorkers or Yankee fans. I love it when they lose. You see, young people, you need to understand that this thing of serving God is not a contest. It's not a contest. God doesn't put us up here and walk us across this platform and have a bunch of people back there critiquing everything and saying, well, they get a check here and a minus here. And, oh, no, that's 2 minus. Oh, no, we're going to have to exclude them. No, that's not it at all. Because God never compares you to anyone. God never expects you to live up to the other person. Even in our playground basketball games, what do? We line everyone up along the wall and we pick the 2 best players, and they choose a number between 1 and 10 to see who gets first. And everyone knows that one is going to pick the best person, so to try to balance it out, okay, you get the best one, and then I get 2 picks to sort of balance it out, and then we'll go 1, 1, 1, 1 from there on. All right? And so we start with the best, and we work down through it, and we pull this one off until it's the little runts and the awkward and gangly people and the ones that don't even know how to play left, and they're all standing there, and everyone's saying, well, oh man, I don't want to pick them. Well, I guess I'll have to pick him. So he comes over. I remember one time when I was growing up at God's Bible School, and my mom wouldn't let me go over and play in the gym until I was old enough to attend school. She said, no, you don't belong there. Once you can attend school there, then you can go over and play in the gym. My problem was I was mischievous enough. By the time I could get that was the number 1 motivator for me. So if I got in trouble, the first thing that was pulled was my gym card. So I didn't play very much in the gym when I was growing up. I went over there and I was lined up along the wall, and they picked and they picked and they picked. And I'm still built real funny, sort of like a gorilla. All right. But then I was really built funny, because by the time I was in 6th grade, my feet were bigger than my daddy's. All right. And you could see me coming about 3 seconds before I got to the corner, these big old shoes coming down. My arms are longer than my legs. You think I'm lying. I'm not. 36-37 sleeve length. Inseam 29-30. The collar of this shirt is 18 and a half, and I can't get it buttoned today. All right? I'm been a little funny. I was always the runt. I didn't start growing until just before my 7th grade year. And I grew like 6 inches, 6.5 inches. I went back to school and no one recognized me. All right? But I grew so fast that my joints and my bones ached, and I was clumsy. I would trip over a change of color in the carpet. I would fall down for nothing. So I'm standing up along the wall, and they're picking and they're picking and they're picking, and they got down, and I was the only one left, and the teams were even. And I remember them saying, oh, Stetler, man, we wish you could play. Stop lying. I'd take you on my team, but then it would make it uneven. So maybe if someone else comes, then you can be on one side and I can be on the other. I mean, he can be on the other and you can be on the team. And I remember sort of saying, oh man, it doesn't matter. I didn't really want to play basketball that much anyway. But it did. In my heart, it did. That's what I wanted to do. But you see, at that moment in my life, I was awkward. I was out of control. I'd get running and couldn't stop till I collided with someone. I'd go for the ball and take your neck off. All right? Still do that a little bit. Now, I grew up on the Bible school campus there at GBS. And many of these older people are people that I remember, even though I was a little kid, I remember a lot of those guys before they were married. All right? I mean, they were just dating, and I would stand out there in the lunch line going into the old dining hall, and I thought, hey, I'm Stevie Stetler, and you want to buy some candy? I was selling candy, and I had a bad speech impediment, and I would stand out, and I knew a bunch of those people, and they're still my friends. But here's what happens. I grew up in a family of overachievers. All right, there's 6 kids. I'm number 5. I have 3 older brothers, an older sister and a younger sister. All right? And my older brothers, the closest one to me is my brother Daryl, and he's 5 years older. And so they were already in college. They were doing things. Dan and David both started in a college quartet when they were still in high school. All right, so they could sing well, and they played sports well, and they did a lot of things well. And so I came along a little bit later, and I had some real problems. I stuttered really, really bad. That's their fault. All right? You think I'm joking? You had never been to a Stetler round table meeting that we called dinner. All right? They did all the talking, and I'm saying, but I want to say something. And by the time they'd shut up, we were already 3 paragraphs on beyond. And I said, oh, forget it. It doesn't matter what I was going to say now. All right? But I stuttered really bad, and I had a bad speech impediment. And besides that, I had this problem called dyslexia. And so I see numbers, and I see letters backwards. I see whole words backwards. If words are spelled close to the same, and I look at them, I will completely change them over. And you know what I found out? I do that in Spanish just as bad as I do in English. And the only way I can tell the difference is the context. And so I struggled. But I would go with my family up to some meeting or something on campus, and everyone would say, oh, Stevie, good to see you. And I was just a runt. My sister, for crying out loud, was bigger than me. She's still bigger than me. I don't feel so bad about it now. I can't believe I said it. Can we edit that out? Oh, my word. It's called payback. I'm not sorry. She would make me do what she wanted. She would chase me around, tackle me, sit on top of me, beat me with a brush, make me agree to all kinds of things because she was bigger. So I would go up on campus and they say, oh, dear little Stevie, you're so cute. I just love your lift. I say, shut up. You know what they'd do? They weren't being bad. They weren't being bad at all. But they'd say, can you sing like Dan? Can you play ball like your brothers? Are you smart like your older brothers? And my answer was no, but I'd like to. I'd really like to. I want to be like them. In fact, I'm trying to be like them. I just don't know how. I don't have the ability to be like them. And yet somewhere I couldn't find it within myself to relax and be who I was. And so all the way through high school and all the way through college and even into my early years of my marriage and my early years of ministry, I was busy trying so hard to be something that I wasn't. Because in my mind, the level of success was up here. Because everyone that was most important to me could do it, I wanted to do it the same way. Now, I grew up in a loving home. My family loved me. Not one time did I ever struggle and have doubts but what my family loved me. I mean, they genuinely loved me. They genuinely loved to take advantage of me. But they genuinely loved me. All right? And I was happy. And I was smart enough to get back at them at every chance. I remember hiding something that was very important to my brother Dan. And he was going on one of his many dates. And he couldn't find it. And I knew where it was. And I never did tell him until later. He needed to learn he could have that date without it. But I wanted to be just like them. All right? My dad, my mom, my wife, my son, my daughter, all of my brothers, all of my sisters, everyone in my family was either valedictorian or salutatorian in their class. Every single one of them. And I graduated. All right? And I was very, very grateful. All right? I worked harder than most of them all put together because it came easy for them, because that wasn't their problem. I mean, they could pick up a book and look through it. I remember my sister Frances and I were in the same class, and she came home and said, "Steve, let's go do something." I said, "No, I can't. I got to study for this test." And she said, "What test?" And I told her. She said, I'm in that class. We don't have a test. I said, "Oh, yes, we do." And she looked. She said, "Oh, yeah, we do." She said, "Where's that book?" And she grabbed that book, and she said, "Okay, I got it." She went in and made a 97. I studied 3.5 hours, and I made a 71. You see, it wasn't that I didn't try. It's just that I didn't have the same thing that she had when it came to studying, because my mind was made differently, and God made it that way, and that's all right. That's perfectly all right. You see, I hated math, and I hated English, and I hated reading, and I hated everything except PE. And then when I got there and didn't get picked, I even hated PE. All right? But I could do math quicker than you could, and I did it in my head. I could do algebra, and I could do it, and I could figure it out, and I just put numbers down. I took a test in Algebra 1 in high school. I was the first or second one done in the whole class. And I turned that paper in, and I left, and the next day, when I came to school, they called me into the office. And they said, "We need to talk to you about your test." I said, "Okay." I said, "Did I make good on it?" They said, "Yeah, you made like a 96. I said, "Wonderful." They said, "The only problem is you had to cheat." I said, "Cheat? Why would I do that? How did I cheat?" They said, "You turned in this algebra test, and there's not one mark on it except the correct answer. You didn't show any of your work. Where'd you do your work?" I said, "I did it in my head." They said, "That's impossible." I said, "Not if it's my head, it's not." I said, "I did it all in my head." They said, "You can't do algebra like that." I said, "I just did." They said, "Well, you had to cheat." I said, "I'm the first or second one done. Pray tell, who did I cheat off of? I was done before these guys. I couldn't have cheated." They said, "Well, we don't know what went on, but no one can do a math test like this and just put down answers. And so you're going to have to take another one. In fact, your teacher," I almost said her name, better not do that. I think she's enjoying her reward. That wasn't sarcastic. I just didn't know for sure whether or not she was dead or not. Yes, she had to be. She was half dead when she was my teacher, for crying out loud. Oh, my word. She had already made out another math test. And they said, "We're going to go in classroom 3, and you and she will take it at the same time. And then she will use her score key to score your test." I said, "Okay, let's do it." So we went and sat down, and I beat her done. I was done before she did. And I gave it to her, and once again, there was not a mark on that paper except answers. And she came back, and I watched her as she was checking them wrong, and she did one wrong, and yeah. And the next one she marked wrong, and I said, "No, ma'am, that's not wrong." She said, "Oh, yeah, it is." I said, "No, it's not. You need to check your work." She said, "That's not my answer." I said, "Well, check your work. I'm right and you're wrong." And she said, "Well, let's see." So she did. She said, "Well, look at there. I forgot to change that sign." "You're right, Stevie." I said, "I told you I was." But it didn't have any work. It was just numbers. That's all. And I made a higher grade on that test than the teacher did. You know what she told me? "Well, that's pretty amazing. But you can't do algebra like that. If you're going to be in my class, you have to show your work." I said, "Okay." And I went back in the principal's office. I said, "I need to drop algebra." And I did. I never took another algebra class in school. Now, God has a wonderful sense of humor, because He called me to be a school teacher. And I said, "Lord, you have got to be joking me." what's with this? I barely made it through myself. You want me to teach? I can't do algebra. He said, yes, sir, I want you to teach. I said, Lord, I can't do that. He said, I know that, Steve. I know that. But I can. Did you hear me? I know that, Steve, but I can. And I will help you do what I'm asking you to do. It's just what he told Moses. Moses said, send Aaron. He can talk better than I can. He said, I know Aaron can talk well because I created him. But you have the heart of the leader, and I want you to be a leader. And if you go ahead and look down through there, he said, I will teach your mouth, and I will give you the words, and I will tell you what to say. And you can tell Aaron, and he will be your spokesperson. But he's not my spokesperson. I'm going to talk to you and only you, because you're my leader. You're the one that I'm entrusting the care of all of my chosen people. I'm putting them in your hands. Young people, listen to me. It's not a comparison between you and anybody else. The reality is, God's saying, I need you, daughter. I need you, son. Will you give me what you have? And you say, but Lord, I'm so broken and I'm so limited and there's so many things I cannot do. And he said, I know all of that because I made you. I'm not asking for anything that I didn't give you. I'm asking for you just the way I made you. Will you give me you? And he said, if I have you, I can accomplish anything in my will and purpose for you if I have you. But I got to have all of you, including the brokenness, including the parts that you would rather change. And let me tell you what, young people, let me tell you what, adults, getting genuinely saved are not going to change some of those things. What it does, it just opens the door and opens your eyes and helps you to understand that God made me. God made me just who I am. And I want you to be you and only you. Now, one of my problems was reading. In fact, I was almost all the way through second grade before I learned to read. And I went to a Christian school, but we had a teacher there that really had some kind of contention with our family. And I'm not sure what that all was about, but I know that she didn't have a lot of the same problems with my older brothers and sisters because they were the smart ones, okay?
It is such a delight for me to be here
I was
again
broken.
and speak from this platform.
I was wounded. I was someone that didn't quite measure up, and she jumped on it. I remember her looking out the window and seeing us play keep away on the playground, and I had the ball, and my best friend John was trying to knock it out of my hands, and someone banged on the window, and we looked up, and she was up there saying, "Come up here," and my friend John said, "Me?" and she said, "No, Stevie," and so I went up there, and she gave me swats for fighting on the playground. And my friend John went with me. And he said, no. I almost said her name. No. We weren't fighting. We were playing keep away. He had the ball and I was trying to take it away from him. If he gets swats, then I need to get swats. She said, you go back out and play. I know what I saw. And so she gave me swats. She knew that I couldn't read. And there was one day a week that we always read out loud in class. She knew that I stuttered. She knew that I lisped. And every single week, she would call me up in front of the class to stand in front of everyone and read out loud. And she knew that I couldn't. And I'd get up there and I would stutter and stammer and I'd say the first word that came to my mind and I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't make heads or tails out of it. And all the kids would laugh. And it would go on until suddenly I would just melt down and I'd burst into tears and cry, and I'd run back to my seat and put my head down on my desk and I'd cry like a baby. And my teacher would say, and Stevie thinks he's old enough to be in second grade. She said, now, really, we probably shouldn't be too hard on Stevie, because I really think Stevie's retarded. I remember going home. We rode a van. I remember going home, and I sat right by the sliding door, and as we came up Ringgold, where we were living then, I sat so I could be the first one out. And when we stopped, I opened the door, and I jumped out and ran up the steps and up into the house, and I'm hollering, "Mom, Mom!" And she said, "I'm up here, Stevie." I went up, and she was sitting on the floor in my sister's room, sorting through buttons and sewing notions, and had a big tin in her lap. And I come running up, and I said, Mommy, I'm not retarded. I know I'm not retarded. I can do stuff. I can do it. I just can't do it like they can do it. My mind doesn't see it the same, but I can do it. Mommy, I'm not retarded, am I? Am I retarded? I remember my mom began to cry. Sorry. I remember my mom began to cry, and she wrapped me up in her arms, and she said, no, Stevie, you're not retarded. You're not retarded at all. You see, God just made you different in some ways, because He has a special job for you to do that no one else can do. I wanted to be like my brothers. Dan was my hero. Dan's still my hero. And for way too long, I put all of my energies trying to preach like my brother Dan. I'd give a lot to be able to preach like him. But God doesn't need me to preach like him. He preaches long enough for both of us. Sorry. I wanted to be musical like my brother David. He can pick up an instrument that he's never seen and give him 10 minutes, he's playing a song on it. Really musical, good high tenor voice, and I wanted to sing and play like him. I took piano lessons for 9.5 years and can't play chopsticks. You see, He didn't need me to play music like David or to be a teacher and an administrator like David. My brother Daryl, keen thinking, he's an organizer. We all four boys stayed in the same room, and we had, in these opposite corners, we had double beds. In these opposite corners, we had double dressers. And each of us had one drawer for clothes, and up on top we had 2 small drawers, and one was for each of us boys, and that was our junk drawer. We could put anything we wanted in there. That was our one sacred place of privacy in the whole house. And no one was supposed to get in that junk drawer. Daryl and I shared this bed and that dresser. Dan and David shared this bed and that dresser. You know, it wasn't the right thing, but after all, I'm dyslexic, so I wasn't supposed to get in his junk drawer. But I remember the day that I opened up Daryl's junk drawer. I just couldn't resist. And I looked in there, and I'm saying, this idiot organizes his junk. It was color-coded. It was from small to large. They didn't touch. They were like little soldiers. It made me so aggravated, I just messed it all up. I said, what's wrong with this guy? I thought I had the problem. God said, I don't need you to be like Daryl. What about Frances? She's so smart, she's borderline crazy. 2 or 3 master's degrees, almost got her doctorate degree. I mean, those kind of people aren't really good for anything, but I'll be like her. He said, I don't need you to be like Frances. He said, here's the thing, Steve. I have Dan. Dan's doing exactly what I created him to do. And he's doing a good job. He is walking with me ever. He is doing exactly what I created him to do. So I don't need you to be Dan. And David is doing exactly what I asked David to do. And I'm completely satisfied with the job that he's doing. I don't need you to be David. And Daryl, yeah, I made Daryl the way he is, and he is doing it exactly the way I want him to do it. So I don't need you to be Daryl. And I don't need you to be Frances. My younger sister, she's 6 years younger than I, and she's worked for all kinds of big corporations, and her latest job before she quit to take care of my parents, she was an assistant manager for one whole shift, and she worked for the IRS in small business claims. All right? 5 of us work for God, she worked for the devil. That's just the way it breaks down. She's one of the biggest hearted people I know. She would literally give you the shoes off her feet and the coat off her back. She would do anything for anyone if she thought you had a need. And I said, well, maybe I can be like Terlinda. And the Lord said, no, I made Terlinda the way she is, and she's doing exactly what I need her to do. He said, here's the thing, Steve. I have 5 out of 6 in your family. The only one I don't have is Steve. And what I need is Steve. I need you. Now, I was 27 years old. I had been in ministry for the last 6 years. There was never a question about my commitment to do what God wanted me to do. I had told the Lord, I will do anything you want me to. I will go anywhere, it doesn't matter. And I meant it with every ounce of energy in me. The problem was, I was trying to do it in a format that was totally out of my realm. If I would have continued there, I still would not have been doing what God needed me to do. Because God didn't make me in that format. He made me intensely dyslexic. He made me stutter. He made me lisp. But He gave me a mother that had sense enough to know that the God that made me that way knew how to help her to help me to be all I could be. Shortly after I came home and said, Mommy, I'm not retarded, am I? I remember walking, I ran up the steps and I ran into the room and I was going to ask her, Mommy, I need, and as I ran into the room, she was vacuuming her bedroom floor. And as I came into the room, I threw on the brakes because her head was thrown back. Her eyes were closed. She was vacuuming. Tears were pouring down her face, and I heard her say, oh, God, you've got to help me help my Stevie. He's in trouble. He's in trouble. You got to help me. We don't have money for therapy. We don't have money for doctors. We don't have money for all of that. But you made Stevie, and you're able to help Stevie's mom know how to help him. And God gave my mother a plan. God gave my mother a plan, step by step, what she needed to do. For the next almost 2 years, I sat beside the stove for an hour and a half, 2 hours every evening as she was fixing dinner for the family. I was there and I was reading, and I had to exaggerate and enunciate and pronounce everything, and she wouldn't let me pass up one word. She'd make me go back and say it, and she said, no, Stevie, that's not right. Well, how do you know? You're cooking, I'm reading. She said, it doesn't make sense. Go back and figure it out. And I went back and figured it out. And by the grace of God and through the help of an intuitive mother, I got over my speech impediment. And I got over my stuttering. That, of course, happened when all the brothers got out of the house and I could finally talk in peace. And I learned to read. In fact, for the last several years, I've averaged somewhere between 3 and 4 books a week. I read as a therapy. And if I go a week without reading very much, if I were to stand up here and try to read out loud in front of you, I'd embarrass myself because I lose that. For some people, it's hand-eye coordination. For me, it's some kind of something weird up in my head and my tongue. And my tongue is not connected right, and I can't say the words that I see, and I can't see the words that are there. So I read and I read and I read and I read. I've spent 20 plus years as a school teacher. You say, how in the world did you manage that? I have no clue. But those guys that were singing up here, I taught several of their daddies and their moms. My wife taught some of them in kindergarten or first grade. You see, here's the thing that God helped me to understand. Life in ministry is not a comparison. It is not a contest. It's a surrender. It's a surrender to Him who knows everything and doesn't make any mistake, young people. I wasn't a mistake. Oh, but you were broken. No, I wasn't even broken. I was put together on purpose by the hand of God, limited in every way that He knew I needed to be limited, because it has forced me to depend on Him. You know what He asked me to do? He asked me to go to this school, Stone City Christian Academy, and He said, I want you to teach advanced math. And I'm saying, you can't be serious. I can't do that. He said, I know, Steve, you can't, but I can, and that's what I want you to do. And I went through all of those books 4 times, every level. And I taught Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 and Geometry and Trig. I've taught them all. And I actually learned how to put my work down on the paper, not for me because I could do it and get it right without it, but for the teacher. No, I mean for the kids that were struggling with the same problem. You know what God said? He said, I have all of your family doing what I designed them to do, but I have a group of people here that are waiting for your help, and you won't let me use you like I need to use you. And when I surrendered to Him, and when I just said, Lord, I will accept myself just like you see me and just like you made me, and if you'll help me, I'll do anything you ask me to do. And folks, it set me free. It set me free. And from that point to this, I've never struggled. Do I still struggle with dyslexia? Oh, yeah. Right now, I'm in a real bad stretch because I just came off the road driving for 1,500 miles in less than 48 hours. And then I'm supposed to come up here, and I'm pacing the room this morning trying to read my Bible. And what I was reading out loud, I knew the Bible didn't say that. So do I struggle with dyslexia? Yeah. God didn't deliver me from dyslexia. God delivered me from a faulty mindset that said that I had to be like someone else to be successful in God's work. He said, no, I need you to be you to do what you can do. My brother Dan can't do what Steve can do. My brother David, my brother Darrell, my sister Frances, my sister Trelinda. You say, oh yeah, give me an example. Well, it's not a very important one, but I can talk like a duck in 2 languages. You think I'm lying? I'm not. If this wasn't going to be on tape, I'd do it right here. I do know that they call me Brother Duck in Mexico. I say something like this.
Hello, how are you doing? I'm just pretty good myself.
And if I'm in Mexico, I say,
Hola, ¿cómo estás? Muy bien, gracias. Usted?
You get that? All right. How many of you want to hear Dan try that? You say, oh, yeah, but that's foolish. Yeah, I know it's foolish. But let me tell you something even more foolish. There's a family in one of our largest churches in Mexico that whole family is actively taking part in that church. In the first service they came, the mom and dad said, we're here to see Brother Duck. Our kids came home and talked about it. We came tonight to see Brother Duck. Well, he wasn't featured that night, but I did talk to him around the outside of the church later on, so they knew who I was. And they started coming, and they are active members in our church tonight. You see, God's not limited by our abilities or our inabilities. God can accomplish His will, and He will accomplish His will and purpose. But here's what you need to understand, you young people. But I tell you what, I have a feeling there's a whole bunch of older people up here that need to understand as well. And there's no better place than right here at IHC. The work of God is like one giant puzzle that interlocks. And we come together from all over. We have probably 30 states represented here. You reckon? A lot of times we do. Several foreign countries. And what we get to see is how God puts all of that together. And it becomes a beautiful picture of grace and a beautiful understanding of what God can do and what His plan is, not only for your church, but for His church, His world. And all of us have a piece to put in that picture. And let me tell you what, sir, ma'am, without your piece, that picture will never be complete. God needs you to take your abilities and your talents or your lack thereof and plug it in, because that is a key part of that part of the picture. And as all of us plug in our part, that picture becomes complete. God said, I don't need you to be anybody but you. Just you. Now, He told me not to go past 4 o'clock. And then I got up here and looked at it, and man, He gave me a long time. I'm not going to take that long. I'm going to take about another 5 or 10 minutes. Don't clock me. Dan Stetler time. Okay? I'm going to have to apologize to him afterwards. He'll know I won't mean it, so. I finally came to grips with the reality that God made me just as I was. And I surrendered to that. And it made all the difference, because suddenly the kids that sat in my classroom, you know what I began to notice? I began to notice that there's a whole bunch of them that had the same problems I had. And I started working with them. They said, oh, but Brother Stetler, you don't understand. I just see things. I said, oh, yes, I do understand. I said, get out your pencil and a piece of paper and write a P, a D, a P, P, D, B, Q, 9, 6. Write them in a straight line, and every one of them looks the same. Write a 3 and an 8, and I can't tell the difference. Write an N and a U, and I can't tell the difference. Now, if I just looked at them, they all look the same. Now, if you were talking to me and quizzing me on it, I would fold my hands like this, and while I was talking to you with this finger, I would be tracing what my eyes saw. The stick goes down, the ball goes to the left at the bottom, that's a D, and I could get every one of them right. But if I held my hands to the side and didn't go through that little exercise, I would look at them, and I would tell you whatever letter came first to my mind. All right? And when I said, oh, but I do understand, and let me tell you what I struggled with, and I have watched kids just crumble and begin to weep And they said, I thought I was so weird. And no one has ever understood until you came. And you know what I'm talking about. And God helped me to help those young people. And there's some that are in pastorates now, and some in mission work, and some at Bible schools now, right now. And God helped me to help them because He made me weird, just like they were made weird. But we connected, and God helped me to give them insight and help them to understand that is not even a part of it from God's perspective. He made you the way you are, and you need to give yourself to Him and trust Him with it, because He doesn't ever make a mistake. So I spent 22 years in teaching. And then the Lord said, okay, I want you to do something different. I want you to sell everything you have, pack up your bags, and I want you to go to Mexico and be a missionary. And I want you to learn another language. I'm saying, Lord, that is impossible. I'm 47 years old, and you want me to learn another language now? I still struggle with my first language. And I'm confused in that. And you want me to learn Spanish now? Lord, I can't do that. He said, I know you can't, Steve, but I can. And I'm going to be right with you every step of the way, and I'm going to help you learn Spanish. And so I moved to South Texas, and I enrolled in language school. Now, if you've not been to language school, let me tell you, I never believed in purgatory until I went to language school. I believe in it now, I promise. In fact, I've been through that cycle 2 or 3 times. Scared to death I'm going to have to go back for another round. He said, yeah, Steve, that's what I want you to do. I'll never forget it. We had what we called dialogues, and they were conversations in Spanish, and you had to learn them. And you would be one person A or person B, but you didn't know which one, so you had to memorize the whole thing. And so then they would come in and they say, I need you and I need you. And you're going to be person B and you're going to be person A. And so you come up in front of the class and you just take off. And person A starts and person B picks up the conversation, and everyone's out there just following this whole conversation all the way down through, and the teacher's there marking every error, every accent problem, every intonation, voice inflection, every word that you didn't pronounce right, and it's just a mess of red marks when you're all done. And that first day, I was like the first or the second pair that had to get up and do the dialogue. And I'm like, oh man. And so they came and said, you, and they pointed to me, and you, and they pointed to a lady, and they said, you come up front, and you be person A, and you be person B. And I got up there, and I turned around and looked at all those people, and they were looking at me, and suddenly I flashed back to 2nd grade. And I was standing in front of a class again, knowing that I had to read and couldn't read. And I looked at those people, and something happened inside, and I froze up like a block of ice. I mean, my mind went totally clear. It was like a blank page. I could not have told you my name in English, and I've been using that for 47 years. But I couldn't. I mean, I was totally blank. And I'm looking out there, and it was time to start, and I couldn't think of the words, and so they tried to prompt me and give me a word or two and tried to help me and encourage me, and it just built and built and built, and it's like something had their hand around my neck, and I couldn't say a word. And all of us were nervous. It was one of the first times we did it, and without meaning anything by it, all of my classmates sort of chuckled. And once again, I heard all of those kids in 2nd grade laughing, and the teacher saying, oh, Stevie's retarded. We ought to take it easy on him. And and something inside me snapped, and I turned around, and I looked at the wall behind me, and I said, Lord, I told you I couldn't do this. I knew I'd make a fool of myself. He said, I know, son, but I'm right here. I turned and looked at my professor and I said, I'm sorry, sir. My mind has gone totally blank. I can't think of a single word. And I went and sat down. All the rest of them went up. They paired that lady with another person and they did double duty and they got them all done. And we were ready. We're at the end of the class. We're ready to stop. And my professor said, he said, I just feel hesitant. He said, I feel like God's prompting me that we need to give Steve another chance to do this dialogue. And I'm saying, oh, no, Lord. No, Lord. I made a fool of myself once. I don't want to do that again. No, Lord. And he said, yes, son. I'm right here with you. We'll make it together. And so I went up and I'm praying and I'm praying and I just cannot convey the turmoil that was going on inside because all I could hear was the laughing. I'm sorry. And I looked up at that class, and they had the other person start. And they started, and it came time for me to say my first words. And suddenly, I felt a hand on my shoulder, and something clicked in my mind. And I did that dialogue perfect. The only one I did all the whole training time perfect. But I didn't get a single mark off. Was it my ability? No, it wasn't my ability. But here's what you need to understand, young people. God has everything you need to do anything He asks. He doesn't ever let you standing along the wall. He's got a place for you. And He's got every ounce of grace and strength that you need. And when you need it, you'll feel that presence beside you. And you'll feel that stirring down on the inside. And whatever it is that you need from another world, right at that instant, it'll be there because God is faithful. And when He asks you to do something, He'll provide what you need to do it. And when He demands it of you, He never asks more than what we can do by His grace. I'm talking about surrendering our brokenness, our inabilities, our weaknesses, our drawbacks, those things where we're inferior. You've got to surrender them to God. You got to put them in His hands. You got to put your hand in His hand. And He will carry you through. I promise He will. You see, we're all broken at one level or another. Every single one of us has our hang-ups. Every single one has their hang-up. But you see, it's those fissures and those cracks that allow the mercy and the grace of God to shine through and radiate out across those that we interact with on a regular basis, and God makes the difference in our life. I want to leave a couple of scriptures with you. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9. He said, no, Steve, my grace is sufficient for thee. For my strength is made perfect in your dyslexia. That was my weakness. I'm not sure what your problem is, but I know that you can put your name in there. His strength is made perfect in your weakness. In the last part of the next verse, for when I am weak, then am I strong. Will you surrender your inabilities, your inferiorities, your brokenness, that His grace can be seen, that His word will be realized, and that men and women can be brought into His fold. Father, thank you. Thank you for your faithfulness. Thank you for your mercy and grace. Lord, it's not about who we are and what we can do. It's about who you are and what you can do through us when we surrender our all to you. Help us right at this moment, Lord, at this moment, to give ourselves to you and relax in the arms of grace and know that his will is perfect. He never makes a mistake. We are who he made us to be, and our responsibility is to give ourselves back into the hands of God to be used by him as he sees fit. Thank you for your help and presence.